Hi Adi, how are
Hi,
you?
Aadi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Welcome.
Hi Adi.
Hi, Aadi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So, today we have a really interesting episode of Chai with Aadi and Aadi coming up. So, today we have a really interesting episode of Chai with Aadi and Aadi coming up. We've got Daniel Batten from New Zealand. And we've got Aditya, who's in India, who's currently en route. What's going on, Aditya?
So I was in a village and we were in apple orchards and now I'm on my home and the interviews time in India is such that I'm traveling and I discussed with Adi and I was like, would it be fine if we do the interview while I'm traveling? And she said, why not? So here we are doing the interview from midway.
Yes, I mean, it's live. And
Yeah.
have you were you able to get yourself a cup of tea on your rocky road trip?
So I managed to get some.
Oh, you did manage. Nice. A bit glitchy.
Hello.
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Daniel, welcome.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's nice to talk to you and then finally see you.
Wow.
So before we meet Daniel, I want to tell you a few things about him that I learned over the last few weeks. Firstly, that he raps very well. Daniel's part of the Art of Living faculty across the Tasman in New Zealand. He's our first Art of Living New Zealander on, and I'm sure not the last. So he's an Art of Living Happiness program teacher, a silence teacher, and he's got his fingers in multiple pies. He's been an actor, an angel investor, and published author as well. He's a motivational speaker and a coach for some of New Zealand's top CEOs. And we're so lucky to have him on today. He had a lot in his resume. Daniel, have I missed anything?
That sounds like a good list to me.
Okay. Thank you for coming on today on Chai with Aadi and Aadi. So we want to get to know you. But firstly, what have you got in your cup today?
It's actually some hot water. It was funny, I was just running an Art of Living course today,
Yeah.
and one of the people there said, you know, it's all about substitution. She said, I used to smoke, then I substituted it with coffee. And then on day one of course, we say, no coffee, please. So she said, no trouble, I'll substitute it with hot water. And
Good.
I substitute coffee with Bastrika. So we're in
Yes,
the business of substituting here.
that's right. It is the coffee pranayam.
Yeah.
Well, we want to get to know a bit about your beginning as well.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, you're such an amazing communicator. Can you see any parts of your journey that started as a child?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I often say to people that often your biggest weakness, be careful because it can turn into your biggest strength. Because, see, what happens is if you have a perceived weakness, then if you're aware, then you might start working on it. And as you start working on it, you notice that what happens.
Yeah, it starts getting better.
Starts getting better, right? And then you go, oh, this is cool. This is getting better. Now, because you started off with a weakness, as in my case, you really notice how it limits you. And then when you start to experience growth, you start to feel good, right? And then naturally the question can arise, oh, I wonder how far I can take this. So it was like that with communication. I, as a child, grew up in a very isolated rural community. There were very few other children around. And it was fantastic in terms of just exploring the environment. So I bonded with nature. But I didn't bond with other children because there weren't any. And so when I started to mix with other children, I really didn't know how to communicate. And my mother realized that this was a concern. And so basically at the age of 4, some child psychologists had to get me in these social interactions with other kids and say, hey, this is how you communicate with other kids. And for me, it was such a relief to finally work out how to do it. But because I was doing it at age 4, very conscious that I was a long way behind in that area. And then I felt that relief and that joy of being able to communicate. I think that seeded something in me that made me think, this is amazing. And then later in life, something happened when I was in school where we had to stand in front of the class to speak. And it terrified me, absolutely terrified me. And we had to do it every month. And it didn't matter what excuses we created for not having our talk ready. We just had to give it the next day when no one was giving their talks. So it was even more like being put on the spot. And I thought, okay, I've got to sort this thing out. There must be some sort of formula or some principle to it. And so at the age of 12 at the time, I thought, well, it seems to me like the people who are speaking well, they're not necessarily saying the most intelligent stuff, but they just seem to be really confident in themselves. So clearly I'm not confident in myself. I've been putting all my emphasis on what I say. Maybe I should focus on my confidence. So I just ran it like an experiment, and at the age of 12, I thought, well, what could be good for my confidence? And I remember, I never read anything about body language or anything, but I just, you can imagine the sight, standing in front of the mirror trying to look big and powerful as a 12-year-old. But it worked, those things worked that I just wanted to play with. And then I gave the talk and the teacher said, who was that person who just got up to speak? And she'd seen a complete transformation. And I went from like bottom of the class to winning the school speech competition the next year.
Wow.
And yeah, so that showed me that that was actually the day that I became a coach, or the day that I think the seed of being a coach was sowed, because I realized I really sucked at something, and just through one insight, I was able to get a lot better. But I realized that this was not only the case just for speaking, it was the case for anything. And in fact, it wasn't just a case for me. I was just one person, but anyone using that same principle, if you just found that limiting factor, you could pretty much get better at whatever you put your mind to. So I was very fortunate that, again, because of having that perceived weakness, I gained an insight that led me to have a breakthrough, and then seeded the idea that I could help other people have breakthroughs.
Wow, that is so profound. It's actually really interesting the way, like even on the path or on the journey, there are so many things that come our way, but identifying them and transforming them into your greatest asset, I think that's really inspirational. Now for our rapid fire round.
Sure.
Aditya has really poor reception at the moment. So Daniel Batten, are you ready?
Absolutely.
The one-on-one. All right, here we go. If you could be any animal, what would you be?
Human.
Oh, nice. Why?
Why? Well, they say that in this life, to have a human birth is one of the great gifts. And so, without a human body, it's hard to then have a master. I don't see too many cockroaches and lizards and elephants who have masters, but maybe one or two. Maybe Maheshwara and Indrani, but not so many.
Fair enough. All right. So what's the nicest gift you've ever received?
The Art of Living Happiness program.
And when was your first program?
2000 was the year I did my first course.
Right. Amazing. And who are 3 people you would invite to dinner? Anyone in the world?
Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, if he's accepting the invitation. And then two very dear people from Māoridom in New Zealand, my cousin and a kuia, who both of those people actually had transformative impacts on my life as well. So I'd invite them to the party.
Amazing. If I was in New Zealand, I could have a dinner party, and with your level of, freedom in this COVID crisis, I'd probably get Jacinta Ardern as well.
That would be pretty cool.
So here's a game that we haven't played before. I'd like you to tell us 3 facts, 2 truths, and 1 lie.
Okay.
And I'll figure out which is which. And I'm watching the live chat, so if anyone's got an opinion, I want to hear it. Okay.
So you want to hear 3 facts, but one of them is not a fact.
That's correct.
Okay. So the first one is that within 1 week of finishing my Art of Silence program, I met my wife and started a business. Second one is that this year I founded a venture capital fund with 2 other Art of Living teachers. And the third one is that I turned down an invitation to do a KFC ad because I didn't like the product.
Oh. Wow. All of them all seem possible, but also, on the improbable side. So this is very challenging. Let's see. Okay. I think your first one was true. After silence, after 1 week, you met your wife, started a business. And then this year you said, okay, all right, maybe the third one is a lie. And instead of KFC, it's like another fast food chain. That's the best I got. So tell us, what were the 2 truths and one lie?
Actually, the first one was not true. It took longer than a week. It took 9 months for those 2 things to happen.
I don't know, anything's possible.
Anything's possible, absolutely. Yeah, I know people who those things have happened to, for sure. I was a bit of a slow burner.
Nice. All right, perfect. Thank you for playing our rapid fire round. Now, when I talked to you before this, I was asking, what do you want to share with the audience? What are the guru stories that you feel are worth sharing? And you told me at the start of the year, Guruji had talked to the Art of Living teachers, both from Australia and New Zealand. And he talked about documenting the stories. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so he was on a chat with us, and this is just after lockdown happened, in New Zealand anyway. And he said, look, this whole world is going into lockdown and many people will be in stress and you can be there for them. And he said, but also use this time for yourself. He said, look, all great artists created in silence, in solitude. And now you have this wonderful chance. So he said, use that time, do some painting, do some drawing, or write your autobiography. And I heard, autobiography. And I'd already thought, at some stage, I want to document a lot of the stories because there's been so many amazing stories, as I'm sure you know, on this path, just sound insane and ridiculous, but they're so fun and they're so juicy and they're so miraculous. And I thought this would actually make a great book. But I thought, writing them all down, that's going to take a long time. Let me create a YouTube channel and let me share them this way instead. That feels like more fun and it certainly feels a whole lot faster. So I just started, and then I did maybe 1 or 2 and I got some nice feedback, and I thought, I'll keep on doing this. This is fun. And before I knew it, I'd done about 20 stories, all about what had happened, different guru stories or different events that had happened at the ashram or while teaching, all those sorts of things.
Right, amazing. Well, one of those stories I'd be interested to know is how your first happiness program went. First one.
Yeah, that was amazing. So even how I ended up there, at the time, I really had felt, I've tried meditation, I've done breathing techniques, I've done rebirthing, I've done holotropic breath work, I've done dynamic meditation, I've done this, I've done that. Da, 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 da. So in my mind, I had these resistances because it's like, yeah, that chapter of my life is done. And at that time, I was busy being ambitious, and I was in the IT industry and chasing career progression and all the rest of it. So I was very fortunate even to meet someone who was on the path, which I wasn't at that time, and invited me along, and I ended up going. And back in those days, it was a 6-day course. This is 20 years ago. And you didn't even do Sudarshan Kriya until day 3. So you've got 2 evenings, and you're learning Bhastrika and Pranayam, and the sessions used to go on a really long time. The teacher was so enthusiastic. They'd go on from 6:30. They're supposed to stop at 9:30. They'd go on till like 11:30. We'd be doing all these complex asanas, and I loved it. It was great having this chat. Some people were saying, come on, I've got to go. But then, after the second day, I would say it was good, but I wouldn't say it was life-changing. But then after the third day, that was when we did Sudarshan Kriya for the first time. And something shifted inside me. It was very, very clear. So suddenly all this grief started coming up, and I just had tears streaming down my eyes. And I was crying very audibly. I know I was disturbing everyone in the room, because people let me know that I was afterwards in a compassionate way. But definitely I was making a lot of noise and a lot of tissues. It was a really quite an extreme experience. But I just knew to trust it and to keep on going with it. And at the end, there were these 2 Māori women. We actually did the course on a marae, like a Māori meeting house. And one of the Māori women came up to me and said, oh, you were grieving for the loss of your tamariki, which means child. And I said, yes, I was. I had a child, and I said to her, yes, I had a child I lost as a baby. She was 6.5 weeks old, and she said, yeah, she's here with you now. She said, there's this amazing pink energy in the room. And I said, yeah, I can feel it. That was her color. Her name was Heather Rose, and her color was that pink color. She said, yeah, she's here with you. And I felt she was, and I felt completely at peace. And I found out years later that the throat chakra, of course, is one spin, it goes grief, and the other direction is gratitude. And that was exactly what happened, because I felt, even though I didn't have words to describe it, that all my grief had transfigured itself into gratitude in that one experience. And rather than feeling grief for her loss, I just felt gratitude for her life, and actually gratitude that she had led me to this incredible breathing technique. And I remember thinking at the time, this is such an amazing technique. Everyone should know this. I should teach this to people. And it was like I went, oops, did I say that? And somehow that little thought must have gone into the ether and floated out, because that seed ended up 7 years later it took, but it did eventually sprout. So that was my first experience of Sudarshan Kriya.
Daniel, thank you so much for sharing, but on a personal level, I had a very similar experience for my first Kriya as well, which was quite challenging for me. Yeah. And, just you speaking about it now, how on one side of grief, there's gratitude. Now, whenever I go to any course, whenever I start any course, I see like particular numbers of a person who was very, very close to me. The same number again and again and again. And like, I know they're with me as well. Yeah. So thank you so much for sharing. Just on a personal level, makes me feel like a bit validated.
Yeah, because, I've done a lot of teaching since, and I thought, people must do this all the time. And I've taken over 60 courses, and I'm like, no, people don't do that all the time. It's me.
Yes.
I was like, wow, that must have been quite something for my teacher to have experienced that too. But she was amazing, and just allowed me to do what I had to do, and it was just felt, as you know, completely different afterwards.
Yes. Thank you to my first Art of Living teacher as well, Girish Pohanko. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And so 7 years later, you became a teacher, or are you talking about becoming a silence teacher? What happened?
About becoming a teacher or becoming a silence teacher? Which one?
What happened 7 years later? What was?
Okay, so 7 years later, that's when I became a happiness program teacher.
Yes.
Those days called the basic course. And even that, it was like there was this... before any profound transition, there was always a grief for me, actually, in those early years, in those first 7 years. When I did my first Art of Silence course, it was just after I'd broken up from a long-term relationship. And then just before I became a teacher, my father had just passed away. And he was actually, he was dying of cancer. And we thought that I'd already booked the tickets to go to the ashram to do my training. And then suddenly my father was in the country and we were with him. And I was like, well, there's no way I'm going. Of course, I'm going to stay here with him. So I'd already resigned myself that I wasn't going to go to India. And then very suddenly he passed away. And, you know, we had his funeral and I was all consumed with that. And when it had all gone and the people dispersed to the different parts of the world, I just picked up my passport, I picked up the dates and I'm like, oh, wow, this is happening in like 3 days. I can still go. And I hadn't even thought about it until then. And then it's like, well, of course I'm going. I just knew immediately. It was like, even though I was, of course, grief-stricken about his passing and that it happened so fast, it also felt like a gift at the same time. So that, well, let's use this gift and let's go there. And I did. And he was very present with me, actually. It was very strange because my father had a terrible memory. He was a real character. And one of the anecdotes my brother shared with me was he said, you know what Dad did one time? He had borrowed a sewing machine and he went down to the car with the sewing machine. Then he realized he'd forgotten his keys, which he did all the time. And the house was 2 flights of stories up, so he didn't want to take the sewing machine back, but he couldn't put it in the car. So he's like, oh, but by the time I've gone to the car, I might have forgotten the sewing machine. So I better put it somewhere I'll remember. So he put it behind the back wheel of the car, went up to get the keys, okay, got back, got in the car, and drove directly over the sewing machine.
Of course, yes.
Therefore preventing the need for the trip. So that was my father. He was always very forgetful. But what happened was interesting because suddenly my father was telling me, this is like he's passed away already, but I can hear his voice, which is a little bit surprising to me because things like that weren't happening so frequently at that time in my life. But I can hear him. And I was looking for my keys and he said, oh, your keys are in that plastic bag and they're next to your headphones and underneath that orange. And I'm like, what? And I'd actually go and I'd go into that bag and know exactly where he'd said. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And then when I went on the plane, he was there with me again and he said, hey, talk to that person next to you. His father's just passed away as well. And I'm like, thinking, come on, Dad, give me a break. What am I going to say? Oh, look, the voice of my father who's just passed away has just come in my head and said that your father's passed away too. Do you mind if I verify? So I can't obviously just go into a conversation like that. So I thought, well, let's just play a bit of detective and start chatting and get to know this person. And I did. And he said, yeah, I've just been with my parents. And I was like, see, Dad, you're wrong. But let's get chatting to this person anyway. And I kept on chatting. And after 20 minutes, he said, oh, yes, and then my father passed away. And I was like, what? I thought you said you live with your parents. And he said, oh, yeah, that was my mother and my stepfather. But my actual father passed away recently. And so that was my father. He was there with me. And then when I arrived at the ashram, that stopped. And it was as if he receded and Gurudev took over. Because the whole time when I was there in the ashram, it was an incredible experience. I met amazing people that I'm still friends to this day. And of course, I told everyone in my teacher training what had just happened. So I was really held like the baby in the group because I was so tender and so raw from everything that I'd gone through. And by the time that it had all finished and I came back to New Zealand, my grieving process had finished too, just in like 3 weeks. And I remember meeting my brother again and he was not there. We were in very different places. And it made me realize just how profound that experience had been. And again, just when you're surrounded by love and you're surrounded by a spiritual community, and when you have the grace of the Master there, how actually even painful things in life, they don't take a very long time before you actually feel joyful again.
It's like about like coming back to the center faster. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yes, very much so.
Yeah, it's such a profound experience. And to have, like, you know, some people have had, I know that I hear voices and things very clearly. And all of these like what I say, attributes that you can develop.
Yes.
They like having a master there, just knowing you're safe while you're discovering all of these parts
Right.
of the universe.
It's all the difference in the world, because I think otherwise it's very freaky, and I know a lot of people, including friends, they've freaked out and they've gone into being labelled mentally ill for these experiences because they haven't had any framework to guide them through, or anyone to guide through these experiences, or maybe they've taken on or listened to the wrong voices. So it's so important.
Yeah, for that guidance, even on those levels. And I think that's really powerful for you to share as well to everyone.
Yeah.
And for me personally, because for those of us who share, like other people do get validated as well. So that's great. And what about you? It sounds like that was just the start of something.
Yeah.
And we've had Rohit Singla, who's written very inspiring. So thank you for sharing. And what about you becoming a science teacher? How did that come about? Did you always know that you wanted to be a science teacher?
Not at all. It was the last thing that I imagined would happen, really.
As a communicator, being a science teacher.
Yeah, it really, to be honest, I thought if I ever had the grace and good fortune to take any other course, then maybe it would be DSM. But then something, because that really appealed to me because it was about personal breakthrough and it sounded more similar to my work. But you know how it goes. The master has his own logic. And clearly that was not my path. And it's been incredible experience being an art of silence teacher. And it's been a real growth journey for me as well. And so I think any teacher will say that when you're a teacher, a lot of the knowledge is actually for you. And being a silence teacher is no different. It's about, again, just so much of the knowledge is for you. And so it's just been exactly what I needed. And so no, it was actually, I had Suki G was in New Zealand, and we were talking one time and he just cut across what I was saying. He said, "You should be an art of silence teacher."
Oh.
Like, what? Oh, really? And he said, yes, absolutely. And then he gave the rationale, because he's got a very good mind, and he knew that I was hearing him, and on one level he knew that I was having faith, but on the other level my intellect still needed to hear some rationalization. So he then proceeded to give the rational reasons as well. And I heard him out, and okay, so then my faith was assured and my logical brain was assured as well. And I thought, okay. And he just described the path to do it. And then I was very fortunate that within about 18 months, the opportunity came to have a discussion with Gurudev about it. And he blessed me to become a silence teacher. And it all just happened very, very naturally, very spontaneously. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So how long have you been a silence teacher for?
I think it must be now about 1.5 years, not very long actually.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And have you seen, and you were there when Gurudev visited New Zealand, you were telling me.
Absolutely, yes.
And sounds like a blessed time.
Both times, yes.
Oh, both times.
Yeah, he's been there in 2004 and 2010.
And will come again soon.
Of course.
Yes. So how were those experiences for you?
They were life-changing. They really were. I remember still the first time in 2004. That was not that long after I did my first Art of Silence course with Swami Satyajeta, of course, who's locked down in New Zealand, where he actually isn't able to come out of New Zealand. And so we've been doing, as you know, so many Art of Silence courses. With
Australia is very jealous. He was we were hoping that he would come here and do silence and blessings for us, but we're happy to see him from New Zealand.
Yeah, for sure. So he was my first Art of Silence teacher back in 2003. And amazing experience. So your question was about my first...
Yes, like when Gurudev was visiting.
When you were visiting. So it was just a short time after that course. And that really was a Kickstarter for me. I didn't become regular in my practice, I'll be honest, until after doing my Art of Silence. And then I became regular. And then I started getting involved more in service activities. And it was just after that Gurudev was coming to New Zealand. And I still remember the email from my teacher. And she said, there's 3 amazing opportunities. She said, number 1, there's this amazing course called the DSN. It's a personal breakthrough course. You've got to do it. Number 2, there's an Art of Silence course. And I'd already done one. She said, come and do another one. And she said, number 3, and best of all, Gurudev's coming to New Zealand. And there's a chance to not only be with him, but if you book flights early, you can actually be on the plane with him, a small plane as it travels around the regions of New Zealand. And I immediately wrote back and I said, oh, these all sound amazing, but which one should I do? And she wrote back and said, what do you mean, which one? All of them, of course. What a stupid question. She didn't say that, but I knew she was thinking it. And I said, see, back in those days, of course, the mind was a little different and I wasn't really thinking in miracles. So I said, look, I would love to do all, but as we do, right? Oh, I haven't got the time. I don't have the money. The usual suspects came up. And she said, Daniel, listen, do you really want to do all 3? And I said, yes. She said, okay, then let me give you this process you can do. She said, it's a very simple process. It always works, provided that from your side, you're 100% committed. She said, you just offer up your prayers to whoever you offer up to them. And you say, look, there is these programs I want to do. From my side, I really want to do them. There is this little obstacle that seems to be in my way. Please remove this obstacle so that I can do what is in my heart to do. And so I said, okay, so I offered it up. The next day, the money arrived, something got cancelled. Boom, I booked all 3 immediately.
Wow.
So then I got, just so simple. And I realized I was just creating these obstacles in my mind because I was used to having to choose and had this belief, no, you can't have all 3, you've got to have one. And so make a choice because it's got to be the right choice. And you can't be greedy. But of course, then our master says, when it's something good, be greedy. And I was. So I did all 3. I did the DSN, I did the Art of Silence, and then I got on the plane with them. And I remember one of the experiences, because everyone had booked the plane out so early, I looked around and we all looked around. Everyone on the plane was devotees. Not a single person who wasn't a devotee. And it was a tiny plane, like a 36-seater. So we only had like 2 that side and 2 that side. And so we looked at each other and we decided, yeah, let's do it. And so as the plane was taking off, we all started going. And the air hostess just started cracking up. And, she must have had such fun talking to her family about what she saw that day. And we took off and we just felt 1,000,000 miles high, and we hadn't even left the tarmac. And that whole time when we were with him, we had some very intimate time with him because we went to these different small regions, and we went to the Art of Living teacher coordinator at the time, the farm host household where she lived in Gisborne, which is a small city, and there are only about maybe 20 or 30 of us, and we all slept marae style, so mattresses or yoga mats on the floor, and we just got to have this really special intimate time with Gurudev, and it was amazing. I remember one time I was in the kitchen cooking something, and suddenly I just became aware there was someone next to me, and I looked across, and literally like this far away at the stove, I'm on the bench and he's at the stove and he's cooking, just minding his own business, and Gurudev is right there. And he's just frying something up on the stove, just so simply and innocently. And then another time there was this beautiful piano, and we were just all sitting around, and suddenly he comes out of his room and he looks at the piano, and then he gets this twinkle in his eye, and he starts playing the piano, and we're all transfixed. And of course, he's never had any piano lessons, so he's playing it like a child. But he's playing it so beautifully and so melodically. And so in a way, no one had ever heard anyone play the piano before. And he had us in fits of laughter with the way it wasn't like he was playing it, he was playing with it. And he really gave us all a lesson on, even if you don't know how to do something, don't let that stop you. You can still bring delight to people. So many of us there who couldn't play the piano, and we'd say, oh no, I won't play that piano, I don't know how. And he just showed us, and he showed me, don't let the feeling you don't know how stop you from doing something you want to do and bringing joy to others. And he showed how you can do that. And then another time I remember, it's just these beautiful little vignettes I remember. We were all gathered round, and he was giving a talk and answering questions. And this one woman in particular was, how he says, if you ask a question and you give an answer, then that question generates another 5 questions. Well, that was happening. So this one woman was asking a question, he'd give an answer, she'd ask again, he'd give an answer, and in the end he and I'd never seen him do this before or afterwards, but he just became very playful, and he stopped answering, and he just got his hair and he put it over his eyes, and he got his beard, and he went like this, and he covered his eyes with his beard, the lower half, and with his hair like this, and then he just went like that as she was speaking, and she became more irate and even more strident in her voice, and he just did this again, and then put it back again, and everyone started laughing, and in the end, she just gave up, and she started laughing too, and she realized that he was actually, through his play, was teaching her the deepest knowledge, which is, if questions don't bring joy to a heart, then there's no value in the questions. The whole purpose of words is to bring us to that joy within. And he was demonstrating that. You have to go beyond words. Just amazing.
Wow.
And I thought at the time, maybe he does this all the time, but of course, no, it was just in that moment, at that time, for that person and for us, that was the perfect way to deliver that knowledge.
Wow. One thing that's such a beautiful story. One thing that just comes to mind now is like from the first Ashtavakra Gita, or it's first or second, just early on, Gurudev says, when your student is asking a question, answer it if they're on the same listening wavelength as you. And I just, whenever
Correct.
I just think, like, do I actually want an answer to my question? Do I actually want to hear what this person has to say? And that stops me every time. But I think this is also a good technique.
Yeah, you can borrow that one, huh?
Yeah, I will. I teach.
Doesn't work so well for me.
Extensions?
Yeah, maybe.
No, that's really beautiful. So how did, you've probably, how long was Gurudev there? For a few months or?
No, it's just a few days. Yeah,
Days.
literally, just a few days. He gave a talk in Auckland, and Dinesh and Bawa were there. Actually, Dinesh shares his experience in one of his talks he gave recently about what happened at the Mahatma Gandhi Centre and how people were pouring out everywhere, and they became very irate about security there, and they had to get people out of the aisles and things because there were so many people who'd come.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so just been maybe 4 days, and he went to Auckland and Wellington, Nelson, and Gisborne in that time.
I remember one of the trips you were saying it was quite an extended period of time, and you were wondering how are you going to stay the entire time with him.
That wasn't New Zealand. That must have been India.
Oh, it must have been India then.
Yeah,
you're talking about like just everything falling into place for you to be able to do what you wanted to do. And I think that's like the beauty of the path.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Aditya and I did a bit of research on your Facebook. You'll have to excuse us. And we know you've acted in ad, and you also have an excellent rapping style. Is acting and writing songs or rap something you generally do, or is it a creative surprise for yourself that you could come across in that way to everyone and share this knowledge?
I had done acting before the Art of Living course, and at one stage I wanted to be an actor, and then I'd actually let that go completely. And then after Gurudev was here in 2010, I was very much of a mindset, I want to, be a coach now. I want to have my own career doing this thing. And so acting, I'd actually said to my agent, please don't give me any more acting roles. Don't give me any more auditions. And she said, yeah, sure, it's been a good run. It's been great working with you. But something very interesting happened. Immediately after 2010, suddenly I got a call from my agent. This is about 3 weeks after Gurudev had been to New Zealand. And we'd all taken a lot of time out from our work. And so I was also conscious. I was at that stage setting up my coaching business from scratch pretty much. And so there wasn't a lot of money coming in. And I was starting to think, oh, okay, they say, well, do the divine's work and the divine will do yours. And it's been 3 weeks and when's the divine going to show up and start doing my work? So that little bit of doubt was starting to creep into my mind. What have I done? Have I been very foolish? And then I get this call from my agent out of the blue, and she says, hey, Daniel. And I said, oh, hi, Linda. How are you? Very surprised to hear from her. And she said, look, I know you said you didn't want to do any more acting work, but there's just this one more opportunity. I said, what is it? And she told me about the role, and I said, look, that sounds fantastic. But, I was very resolute. I'm not doing this work, even though I could have done with the money. But, of course, there's no guarantee. You go along to an audition and there's maybe 100 other people. So it's a long shot. So I thought, no, I want to stay focused on my coaching. Thank you so much anyway for thinking of me. I'm honored, but I won't do the audition. She said, oh, that's okay. She sounded a little bit disappointed. Put the phone down. 15 minutes later, she rings again and says, Daniel, you're not going to believe this, but I spoke to the casting director and they said they will actually consider you for the part along with the others, even if you don't do an audition, because you auditioned for a different commercial with the same client a year ago. I was thinking, what? I said, okay, sure. And she said, can we use your old audition tape? And I said, well, yeah, sure. Now, apparently what had happened was that this was a dancing role. So I had to do this crazy, I mean, I don't mean like professional good dancing. I mean like crazy, funky dancing like I do. And I can do that. But a year ago, I did some dancing as well. I don't think I was asked to, but I just did some. And they had this take of me dancing, and so they put that in, and they went with everyone else as well, and they had a look at them all. And the next day she rang up and she said, you're not going to believe this, they've given you the part. And so I got this lead role in this commercial, which then minute-long commercial, which was like the highest airtime commercial in New Zealand of that whole year, more than took care of financially for what I hadn't got during Gurudev's tour. But most importantly, it was just a joy from start to finish. And I hadn't even auditioned. It never happens. As an actor, unless you're someone very famous, you never get a part without auditioning, because in a year's time, you could have completely changed your appearance or state of mind or whatever. So it's a big risk. But apparently they were looking for something very specific. And obviously they were looking for this person here, who moves in a very unique and idiosyncratic way and clearly doesn't care about other people's opinions when he's dancing, which Art of Living definitely helped with. So I got the role and I did my crazy dancing, and it was just a joy. And people on the set were saying, because they were offering me coffees and things, and I just kept on dancing and dancing. They're saying, man, where do you get all this energy from? I was saying, oh, well, I have a secret. Talked to them a little bit about what I did, but it was just the most fun I had on set. And I said to a few people, oh man, this is so much fun. I mean, I'd do this even if I didn't get paid. And they're like, shh, don't say that too loud. And it was so funny because, it's that point of surrender where I let go of wanting to be an actor and wanting to make it and all those things and wanting recognition. And at the point of letting go completely, it all came. And I had that experience of, that little small experience of what fame was like. It was very interesting. And I thought, that's enough. That's enough for me. I don't need any more of that. I had people stopping me in supermarkets and shopping malls and wanting to take photos with me. And I thought, actually, this is overrated. This is actually not something that I would like any more of. But I'm grateful that I had that taste. Yeah.
Wow. That's such an interesting story. And also the idea of surrendering, like at a point, it's easy to say, but what helps you get into that state of mind to actually surrender?
And the funny thing was, if I'd said yes to that commercial, to the audition, I might not have got the part, because obviously there was something magic in that dance that I did a year ago, that I might have got directed differently, and it wouldn't have brought out that same quirkiness or whatever. But that audition tape was the one they were supposed to see. So by staying true to what I felt was right and truly surrendering, that's when it happened.
I think this is actually, I've been talking to, like this idea of surrender for me personally is something I'm learning. So I ask a lot of people about what surrender means to them. And from the way you're talking, it seems like when you sincerely drop everything. Like
it has to be sincere. It's like, it's a little bit like service, when Gurudev says, if you're giving service and then it's like you're expecting something in return, then it's not true service. And I think it's the same with surrender as well. If you're surrendering, it's like, okay, I've surrendered, so can something instantly manifest? So that's, again, so even my service at the time that I gave to Gurudev's trip wasn't complete service, because I still had some expectation I'd be taken care of, which was another lesson. But yes, surrender has to be sincere. It has to be total. It can't be something you do just with an expectation that, okay, now universe will provide for me, because I genuinely had let go completely of everything that acting had meant.
And, you know, even when you invite people on courses, like through like what I can go through, like your Facebook videos, because we haven't met each other in person, it's really inviting and it's kind of different. Can you speak about the way that you communicate like the happiness program and what the art of living means to you to
Sure.
other people?
Yeah, so the most important thing for me is the mindset that I'm in. And I know because I've been attached, and I remember very clearly the mindset that didn't work when I came back from my teacher training, and I was like, right, I'm going to organize an intro talk, and I got 15 people along, and I was feeling really happy, and I've done this all myself, and lots of bullshit. And then I gave this talk to everyone, and then it was great, and then no one registered. And I just went boom down, and I felt so flat. And my teacher had to scrape my ego off the floor and tell me, and give me compliments and praise just to get me out of my Tumsic state. So to use all the tricks to try and pump up my ego, so I wouldn't give up because I was just so expecting some immediate fruit. And she said, "Look, it's not about that." And many people. She didn't even give me spiritual knowledge. She just said, look, the people you've talked to, they'll come back, and sometimes they don't always. And I hear from lots of people, you did an amazing talk. And she really had to talk like that. So I realized that actually, it's so easy to become attached to outcomes, including as an art of living teacher. Oh, I want to do this course, and I want to do this big course, and lots of people will enroll. And then what happens? It's like, and people don't enroll, then we... And then if you're on the course and you're delivering this knowledge, oh yes, opposite values are complementary, and sometimes but it's like if you haven't practiced that, then it's like you're talking this knowledge and you're like, I think this knowledge is for me. So, many teachers will say the same thing. They'll say, actually, the knowledge is for them as much as it is for anyone else, maybe more so even. So somewhere along the path, this attachment to this outcome just dropped completely. And I just realized, no, it's I have to be what I'm asking other people to be. It's that simple. If I can't embody the qualities that I'm asking of other people in the course, then something's out of alignment. Something energetically is not going to work, and things won't happen. So again, let me put my effort in, but hey, if no one comes, it's okay. And there's many courses that I've had to cancel, or no one came, or 2 people came, or we had 4 people and we had a venue, and it's like, well, will it pay for itself? And at the last minute, do we have the budget? Do we have the money? And, one person saying we should cancel, another person, no, have trust, have faith, and all those sorts of discussions, right? I'm sure you're aware of these dynamics that happen. But you see, if we're going with a mindset of, oh, please come to my course, then it doesn't matter what you say. That's what people will hear. That's what they'll experience. And actually, that's all about, the emphasis is on you. So for me, what I really endeavor to do is get myself out of the equation. Best is to have no desire, but if there is any desire, then just put it consciously to one side and say, okay, that's irrelevant. Whilst I'm communicating, what's my intention for others? Let me help other people. Let me give the gift that I myself have received. And whatever they do with what I say, doesn't matter. Just from my side, let me communicate my truth. And that spirit of non-attachment, so 2 things. One is the intention to serve others, not to fill my course, but the intention to give a gift to other people. And number 2, dropping any attachment to what those people would do with it. I always focus on those 2 things. And again, this isn't my wisdom, this is our master's wisdom. It's just taking me a long time to apply it. But I find that with communication, these are the most important things. And then the actual words that come don't really matter that much, to be honest. I mean, of course, it's good if you can tell stories and you can be succinct with your communication, but that matters relatively less compared to the intention.
Like the thing is, me personally, as like a volunteer of about a year now, after doing VTP, for me, like, yes, I read knowledge and everything, but listening to people who apply it, it's the energy around it. Like you can say anything and I'll still be inspired.
Exactly. Yeah, people can feel the difference. I mean, just like you can tell the difference, they can tell with us as well. So that's the most important thing, I feel.
So is that what is that your message to teachers and volunteers, or what else would you like to spread from this platform?
You know, I feel very humble in what I do. I mean, there's many teachers who are doing much more than I am. So I don't feel like I'm really talking from any stage of great accomplishment. I just want to say that first off. I mean, we're just doing whatever we can, my wife and I, month to month. And we're just very fortunate that people seem to just come along through a confluence of different circumstances. But I was reflecting on some things that for me have really helped to build steady courses which are going well, people having good experiences. The first thing is I actually learnt from satsangs, and that is consistency. In Bali, about 12 years ago, Gurudev said, "How many satsangs do you have in Auckland?" And we said, "1." He said, "You should have 5 at least." And so I just thought, okay, Master has spoken, so let me have this intention. And I immediately invited people to satsang, and then 2 people showed up. And then, of course, I got dispirited, and then I thought, it's not working, and then I cancelled it. And then I realized that actually that was silly, because that was showing that I was only committed so far as I was getting some external validation. Right? All people are showing up, that means that I am capable of hosting a satsang. So it was all about my ego. And then we moved house, and I thought, okay, I'm going to start them again, but this time there's one thing that's going to be different. And I said, I don't care if I'm the only person there, and I'm singing my guitar. I'm going to sing bhajans, and even if no one else is with me, satsang doesn't stop. And so with that spirit, I announced them again. We kickstarted them, and they took off. Everything was the same. The only difference was, from my side, I knew that there was nothing that was going to stop them, even if it was just me. So then with courses, the same principle applies. It's like that consistency of, right, there will be a course, and just making sure, like, what I've done now is making sure before this course ends, the next one and the next one after that are already pre-booked. They're already online, they're regular times of the month, so you can announce them. An email goes out, that we just finished a course today. We do them in our home. We've got a space where we can take them, like a nice big space downstairs. The course was full. And we sent out the email, and immediately the invitation goes out to the next one. We had a WhatsApp group, and we don't set it up ourselves. We asked one of the people on the course to set up the WhatsApp group, so we're starting to get them taking leadership right from the start. That's already happened. The WhatsApp group has started. They're already starting to share experiences on it. I just saw about an hour ago. And we've got 2 other WhatsApp groups going, and we actually picked up this trick from Ripple, who led that's what she did. And so I think, stealing ideas from other teachers is great. So as soon as you find an idea that one teacher is doing, then just steal it, Picasso once said, amateurs imitate, but experts steal. So steal these ideas, use them. And that's been a great idea. So there's these little nuances really make a difference. Yeah. And the other thing I think's made a big difference is really just spending a lot of one-on-one time with volunteers. Every teacher has their own unique style. Some teachers, they'll just be talking about outer living 24/7. That's not so much what I do. My style has been more just working with key volunteers and just encouraging them and giving them thoughts on how they can, reach their people and their network and their community, and just, really trying to build them as people. And this seems to be very effective, because now most of the people who come are they're not people I know, they're people who my volunteers know, or who people who've done the course previously know. You run out of your own network very fast. Yeah.
Right, that's amazing. Daniel Batten, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming on Chai with Aadi and Aadi. And personally, I've been so blessed to hear your stories straight from you. And thank you for everyone who's watching us today. Like, subscribe, comment, share, the bell. Normally Aditya prompts me to do all of these, so I think I've got all of them. But thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, and thank you for the opportunity. It's a wonderful service and wonderful gift that you're giving for everyone. So well done for taking that initiative.
No, thank you. It's so easy for us to get the platform ready, but just have you inspiring everyone. And Ahil, my brother, has actually said thank you. So he also thanks you.
Wonderful.
Great.
Okay.
And it's been great. Thank you. Jai Gurudev. Thank you.
Jai Gurudev. Bye bye.
Bye.